guys, it's Danny. Today we are going to make some orchid updates. There are some orchids which I don't feature all that often on my channel because they're not necessarily doing much in the sense that they're not blooming. Whether they are seedlings or recovering orchids or orchids which simply didn't bloom so far, here are the orchids which we don't get to see all that often, but definitely I believe do deserve a little bit of a spotlight. Some of them you guys requested to see, so without further ado, let's start. First off, here is the Paraphalaenopsis labukensis, which I know somebody requested to see. This is a very slow grower. I purchased it about 3 years ago. She was such a very tiny seedling, and look at her today. Even though she grows slow, she did put on quite a bit of length. And this is not the longest her leaves will get. They should be at least double than this or even more, maybe measuring about 1 meter long. But what I love most about this orchid is the flowers. I've never seen them, obviously, she's still a pretty young orchid, but seeing pictures on the internet, I can only imagine how beautiful they can be. Bonus, they should have a fragrance as well. Supposedly they smell a little bit like cinnamon, but hey, you know, fragrance is personal, so I'm very curious to make my own impression about the fragrance. So far, so good with this orchid. I keep her in the same place I've always did. She receives southern light, the sun is filtered by a sheer curtain, and I can't complain about the growth way too much, to be fully honest, considering she was so tiny. We have roots, we have leaves, but I guess you can see why I don't feature her way too much. I am waiting for her to mature and hopefully enchant me with some blooms very soon. Next up, the Trichopilia suavis. This is a really lovely species that I purchased about 2 years ago from Orchid Garden. This is my initial one. This is a replacement that I purchased about 3 months ago. If you remember, I never got to grow my Trichopilia well, and I've been trying for the past couple of years, moving it around, trying to find better locations for it, trying to find that spot that she would love. And I always had very poor growth on it, starting from roots, ending with foliage. As you can see, the new leaf, which is the best leaf it ever had, has a lot of spotting, it's discolored, there aren't a lot of roots. There's something wrong with this orchid. So I decided to get another one and just see how I do with the other one. It happened many times to me in the past that I struggle for several years with an orchid, I cannot seem to make it work, and then I buy another individual from a different source and that one just goes. And the latest example is the Monarchica, which is such a joy to grow, after I struggled 5 years with one of them. And well, this is the replacement. I got it from Orchid Man on eBay, again 3 months ago. I was lucky that I found it when post offices were working still, because this is not very common here in Europe, at least at the sources that I usually buy from. But look at this one. I got it for 3 months. It didn't create a new growth just yet. This is how it looked like when I got it. I repotted it. It did not suffer any dehydration, anything at all. And furthermore, we already have very vigorous roots growing, which never happened with my old one. So I do have to consider sometimes that maybe my individual has a problem, and there really is no way to verify that unless you buy a replacement and see how you do with that one in the same conditions. So fingers crossed that I will have much more success now with this one. I will continue to care for this one as well, and yeah, I'll keep you up to date. We'll see what happens, but I do hope for blooms soon because the flowers are wonderful. You know what I would love to have one day? A sort of podium to display my orchids when I film them, particularly the pendant ones. And Joe is making fun of me because now I'm using inverted decorative containers. I don't know if what I'm thinking of actually exists, so if you guys know something that could take the place of this guy and look a little better, do let me know in the comments below. Alrighty, next up we have a Dendrobium. This is the aggregatum crossed with jenkinsii, or rather jenkinsii crossed with aggregatum. Now, this orchid, I do have a flower spike finally this year from this orchid. Again, I have it for a couple of years or 3 years or so. It was a very tiny orchid when I purchased it, grew a lot. The thing is, it's the type of Dendrobium that requires a major cool down in the winter. And I made sure to keep this orchid outside until one day when I got some damage on some orchids, and I thought, oh, it's a little bit too cold, let me put this guy inside. And he was already starting a flower spike. I was expecting more of them to show up, but no. I think the fact that I put it inside the greenhouse then kind of disrupted its blooming cycle, so I only have one single flower spike, but that's okay. I can do better next year. I think this one can actually handle the chill in the winter here in my climate. I don't have freezing conditions, but it makes me just a little bit nervous when it's rather windy. However, I will enjoy one flower spike. This one though can create multiple flower spikes. I see that I already have new growth on it as well, so I don't think new flower spikes will come. It's next year for me, but I'm happy that I have a flower spike. Next up, can you guys guess who we have here? This is the Dimorphorchis lowii. Finally, I have a good update for you guys. If you remember, up until now, I kept trying to keep it in leca and all sorts of inorganic materials. It wasn't all that fun. And last year, I think the last update we made on this one was when I cut away some of its leaves, one here and one, I think the tip of this one. The leaves got very spotted. You can see some spots I still have on this leaf. I decided then not to cut away this leaf. I didn't want to defoliate this orchid way too much, so that's why I left it on. But luckily for me, the spots didn't advance. And well, ever since then, I'm happy to announce that everything is going great. I have brand new leaves on this orchid. Ever since then, it almost completely grew another leaf. There is another one on the way. There are no more spots, which is wonderful, and the color looks a lot more vivid on it. I also switched it to a fully organic setup, which is made up by bark and sphagnum moss, my typical mix, and it's doing fantastic. Look at these roots. Here is one, here is another one. How pretty do they look? I would say things are going very well. Sadly though, this guy is still a seedling. It's a vendaceous type of orchid. It takes a lot of years for it to mature, so we won't be seeing blooms anytime soon, but I think I'm on the right track. With a lot of energy comes faster growth. Of course, I cannot expect the impossible, but I do want to give it the conditions to make it have an optimum growth. So far so good. Yet another year with the Dimorphorchis lowii. I'm willing to wait because the blooms on this one are gorgeous. It produces two different blooms on the same flower spike. You guys should Google it and see the blooms because it really is special. Next up, another special orchid that I've had a lot of issues with. This is Cymbidiella rhodocilla. I purchased it a couple of years ago. It's a seedling, although it grew a lot, but I think you can see I have a lot of damage on the older leaves. Initially, I thought it was because of the inorganic medium, but now I do suspect that it was an insect problem or a combination between the insects that I had, which were the spider mites, and the leaf tip dieback was caused by the inorganic setup. This plant is a magnet. It's like nothing I've ever seen, and not only is it a magnet for spider mites and other pests, it's also very sensitive to transport. I lost two of them on transport until I managed to get one that looked in decent condition, and this is because it only took 4 days to arrive to me. If it spent more than 4 days, things would have looked very bad. So what I did with this orchid was to treat it with my anti-spider mite solution, which I'll link you down to, and it worked just fine. The problem is I certainly do not want to rot the growth, and that's a risk that you always need to take whenever you spray anything that contains water. So recently what I'm doing is using leaf shine based on mineral oil, and I just spray it very mildly like so, just to add a very thin layer of oil on the leaves, just to keep the insects at bay, because I don't know how in the world they find this orchid, but they find it. So that's what I'm doing lately. It works absolutely fine. I don't need to prepare my solution, which I will start to use when the weather will be much warmer. Now though, it's very risky. I don't want to rot this new growth, but that's how I kept the leaves in good condition. By the way, if you want to learn more about this stuff, check the description. I'll link you to a video down below. Do I think you should start to spray all your orchids with leaf shine? No, there are multiple types of leaf shine. This is a paraffin-based leaf shine. I don't think it's needed. I think you can get away with other measures as well, of course, but sometimes sometimes you just cannot use water on your orchid because you're just gonna rot the crown. And I had it happen with quite a few orchids this autumn. I'll show you one of them in this video. So no thank you, I don't want water in the crown of my Phalaenopsis, the monopodials, or these guys which only have one growth. I don't want to risk it. So this was a lifesaver. From an orchid that attracts insects like nothing else, here we have one that never had any type of issues with any type of insect ever since I purchased it. I'm not gonna say that it's immune to pests, I'm just gonna say that maybe it's not their favorite. This is Maxillaria tenuifolia, which, don't you just adore this wild shape? I love it. It is time for it to start producing some buds, and I do already see some buds sprouting in the sheets. Other than that though, throughout the year it just grows. It only blooms once a year, and the bloom show can be spectacular. It's very fragrant. People say it smells like coconuts. I find that it smells like pineapple for whatever reason. Whatever it is, it smells really nice, and the shape is just wonderful. It's a wonderful plant to have even if it's not in bloom. But other than that, it really doesn't do much throughout the year. However, just look at this foliage. It is impeccable. As I was saying, never had issues with anything with this one. However, I've never placed it in an organic medium, only organic. And well, this year after it's done blooming, I need to repot it because this pot dries within 2 days. It is such a thirsty orchid. One of the things that Maxillaria tenufolias love is water. And I'm starting to have major issues with that. So probably I will place it in a standard pot. This is an 8 cm pot, which was adequate at the time. Now it's not anymore. This orchid though has a tendency to climb, which is okay because the roots grow inside these sheets and then they go in the medium. So it's not like a climber oncidium. So that's why it has this beautiful shape to it. I use a wire support, which I know you will ask about. I don't know where you can find it. I find it locally at a garden center. I searched Amazon and other stores. I couldn't find anything similar, but I think you can DIY it. All it is a round support with some legs made out of wire. That's all there is to it. So this was my Maxillaria tenuifolia. I know somebody asked about it. Definitely suited for beginners with orchids as well, especially because it's so tolerant and loving of water. Sadly, it's not all good news, and I know some of you asked about the Phragmipediums. Well, I don't have them anymore. They did not make it. They just melted. I don't know if it's the temperature that I can provide here or something else in my culture. They really are not the same as the Paraphalaenopsis. So sadly I don't have the other ones. I do have this one though, which was my favorite to begin with. So I'm happy about that at least. This is the Phragmipedium popowii. This, unlike the other two, which were Besse hybrids, this one enjoys more light. It supposedly is not so fussy about its water. It can handle a little bit of drought, a little bit of heat, and I can tell you for sure that it behaves differently than the other two. It had issues in inorganic, as you can see, but I transferred it to organic, and the new leaves look very, very good. It naturally has a little bit of wrinkling in the leaves, so that's absolutely normal. I see that the color returned to the leaves. I have beautifully deep green leaves on this guy. But when it comes to the other two, I did not find the perfect formula here in my climate. I do have another tiny Besse that one of you guys sent to me. I have that one still, but from my old crew, this guy is the only one left, and I'm trying to make it thrive. It looks okay. I just don't know exactly what the problem was with the other ones. I might try it in the future, try some other ideas, but I'm not in a hurry, you know. I will enjoy this guy. I will enjoy my Paraphalaenopsis. Phragmipediums, I need to learn a little bit more about them before I try again. There are other orchids which spark my fancy now, which I know will do much better in this climate than Phragmipediums. One type of orchid though that seems to be thriving in my environment and that I would love to get into a little bit more this year or next year, depending on the budget and availability, is the mule orchid. The scientific, roots grew on the tag. There we go. So the scientific name is not written on the tag. So this is a marine crossed with Hematocilium. These guys used to be oncidiums at some point, such as the Cycopsis and the Tolumnias. But now they have a genus of their own. I like to call them the mule ear oncidium because they have this wonderful shape to the leaves, and as you can see, this guy is just thriving. Let's see. Look at those roots. They are just going wild. So it is doing fantastic in my climate, and why not try out a few more of these guys since I know they can do okay. Flowers can be really beautiful, but for me, the shape of the orchid itself is rather interesting. It has a little bit of a cycopsis shape to it, and also it tends to stay rather compact. I love that I don't have to deal with climbing tendencies and things of the sorts, which means I can actually extend the time in which the orchid sits in its pot. So ever since I received it, it did mature this growth, and I think this one as well. Some in the back here we have another direction, and I do love this spotting on the leaf, which is absolutely normal. It is natural pigmentation. No flower spike just yet, but it's okay. I absolutely enjoyed this orchid for the foliage as well. Next, let's look at the Dendrochilum and I'm not sure if you pronounce it as Dendrochilum. This guy, I purchased it a year and a half ago or so. It did not look so great when I purchased it. Ever since then, it did bounce back, but it's taking forever. It grows very, very slow. You can see the new growths are just so tiny. This one is still growing, so hopefully this year I'm gonna have better and better growths on it. But for a very easy orchid, how people tend to describe it, I don't find it that way. Maybe mine was a little bit too stressed or a little bit too sick when I purchased it already. I find it to be very, very slow, not very willing to put on good growth. Does my individual have an issue? Perhaps. I don't know. I'm doing my best, but really there's nothing to brag about. Root system though looks pretty okay, pretty decent. And oh, you can see a little bit here. I just recently repotted it because I just watered my orchids yesterday or 2 days ago, so that's why they're wet. But yeah, other than that, I cannot really brag about much, but he's still around. And we are approaching the end of the video. 2 more orchids I would like to show you. This is my Sarcochilus. Fits hard crossed with Harmony. For the longest time, this guy did not do anything. And again, I was considering trying to purchase another one from a different source, but recently I detected a very foul smell from its old pot, and I decided to repot it because some of the roots did not look so good. When I removed the sheath from the base, I found, I think, a flower spike or a new growth. I think it's a flower spike. I'm not entirely sure, but at the time when I found it, I got really excited that it's a flower spike, and for a second there I thought, oh, I'm just gonna let it be, let it bloom and then repot it. But 10 minutes later I came to my senses and decided to go ahead and repot it because that medium was a no-no. It was very, very dry for it, or should I say very airy, and the roots did not make it. You cannot really see any roots here, but there is a root at least inside the medium. And I'm happy I repotted it because look at that, there are brand new roots sprouting from the base. And because I've already repotted the orchid, they're not gonna get damaged during another repotting, which is great. So will this little growth here continue to grow and bloom? I don't know. I don't really care, to be fully honest. I would love to have flowers, obviously, but right now I care a little bit more about the health of the orchid, and I'm hoping that this medium will be a little bit more suited for it. It's a little bit more moist than what I used to have it in, but I have to say, it's not performing spectacular, this little Sarcochilus. Either it's my environment, either it's this particular one, I don't know. Again, not in a huge hurry to purchase myself a few other Sarcochilus. I have other priorities. I am, however, keeping it almost on the floor, very, very low on the shelf. Not a lot of sunshine. I have my LED tube there, but I think it likes it there better than any other place in my grow space because it did this. However, though, I do consider that the medium I had it in, which was a mixture of bark, what's that called, pumice, and leca, yeah, that was way too dry for it. So we'll see how it does this year. And if at some point it decides to continue the flower spike, I would be even happier because for a while I thought I would lose the guy. And the last orchid that I know some of you wanted to see, she's currently outside, is my vanilla orchid, which I think during this winter had some sort of infestation with something, or that excessive sap it produced, I think it started to affect the leaves. It definitely affected the growth point to the point of stopping to grow altogether and rotting, which is not fun. But it happened. Now she's outside. I am showering it. It is pretty warm, so I can go ahead and shower her right now since she doesn't actually have a funnel-like crown like a Phalaenopsis. But I have to say I did not detect any insect on it, although it looks like it has insect damage, which is weird. So I'm not entirely sure what's happening with it. I think it needs showering from time to time because it produces so much sap. And that sugary sap is very inviting for molds, particularly in winter when things are not very warm. They're also a little bit more humid than typical here in my greenhouse. So I'm hoping that she will do okay outside. Theoretically, she should love the heat, but I don't know. I'm gonna try it outside this year, see what happens, because outside I can definitely shower her a little bit more, but yeah, the growth point is gone, hoping for an offshoot. And speaking about rotting issues, I do seem to have had quite a few issues with my monopodial orchids. If you guys remember the Sideria japonica Myanmaru, the one that had a really lovely variegation, she had crown rot or stem rot. This is the Sogo Vivian, which is variegated. Here we have crown rot, and this happened because I did do my routine spider mite spray, which is good for spider mites, but it contains water, and whenever we play with water in crowns and stuff, we can induce some rotting. And before you start to comment what happens in nature, nature is a little different than our living room. We have a lot more air movement, we have a different shape to our orchids. Phalaenopsis typically would grow like this in nature. They would definitely have a very different shape and position. We also have a different bacterial and pathogen climate. There are many things that are very different in nature, so we cannot really play by the same rules. And needless to say, I'm not happy with this on my monopodials. When it comes to sympodials, things are really not that bad, not even with new growth, although I do definitely try to avoid new growth as much as possible. But let's say you lose a new growth on a sympodial orchid, it's not the end of the world. There are multiple eyes just waiting to get a signal and they will develop. However, in the case of monopodials, you lose the crown, you risk losing the entire orchid. So I have decided that it would be better for me to use leaf shine for now on my monopodial orchids, sparingly, not just spray the entire orchid. I have been doing some trials. Things are looking okay. So for now, I do want to actually avoid water on my monopodials. At the same time, I got myself one of these guys, which I showed you in my previous video. This is a continuous sprayer, and it does a much better job at distributing water evenly and not actually the oil, which helps with the spider mites. In this way, I'm hoping that I will not actually deliver excessive water, but just enough to cover the leaves. I just don't have the courage to do so on my monopodials anymore. But that will be for a different video, of course. I will continue to run trial and errors because something like this can be super bad and super detrimental if you don't use it correctly. So I will go ahead and assess the situation and come back with this subject in a different video, but for now, this has been the update. And as the thunderstorm starts outside, Maya is enjoying a nice little bath. She just laid an egg last night, so she deserves a bath. Joey is on egg duty. She's always on egg duty. Somebody actually asked me, what are you doing there? She's arranging the straws. Somebody asked me why I don't feature Joey in my videos as much, or why don't I get her out. She's always welcome to come out. She just prefers to sit on the nest most of the times, while Maya is the one who prefers to do all sorts of activities outside of the cage throughout the day. Also, Joey is not the friendliest, Maya is. So if I go and say hello to Joey, hi baby, oh, she's not afraid. She thinks I'm bringing her something good, but usually she would puff up and let me know that I'm not allowed around her nest. So yeah, I love both of my girls, but they do have very different personalities. So with that said, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have other orchids you'd like to see, just leave me a comment down below, and in my next update, I'll make sure to include them. Subscribe to my channel for more orchid videos, tutorials, experiments, updates, and other fun orchid subjects. If you wish to support the channel, do consider becoming a member or visit the merch store linked down below in the description. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook. It's always nice to stay in touch there as well. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!